Right, welcome to this council meeting. We'll get underway. It's 9:30. Got a mix of people on Zoom and in the room today. So I think we've got Councillor Hill, Councillor Butler, Councillor Greening on Zoom. So I'll open with kia, whakataka taho, ki te uru, whakataka taho, ki te tonga, kia makini kini kuta, kia matata tara ki tai, he aki, ate atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti hei mauri ora. Do we have any apologies? I think we're all here either in person or on Zoom. So we'll now move to the public forum. So we've got 3 registered speakers, Dave Hicks, Jean Cooper and Helen Vesper. So I'll just work through in the order that they're on the agenda. So first up, Dave Hicks. Welcome, Dave. So public forum, 5 minutes. Utilise it how you wish. And I'll give you an indication at 4 minutes so that we can manage the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, clearly all 3 of us are here today to talk about the Pahara store or the Pahara car parks. I have a letter here from Amy that's got Molly B's asked me to read that out as well. So I'll go with that first and then start on mine. So Amy's written, unfortunately, I'm able to attend today's public forum due to other commitments. However, as a business owner in Pahara, too, I am concerned about the impact the shared path will have on our community. There has been very little community discussion or information with those directly affected only after the decision had been made. There has been discussion on safety concerns and impacts as a reason to extend the existing cycleway. However, the safety/impact issue is our concern. During the holiday season, tourists flock to Golden Bay with their car park, the camp and the store. Where do the people go? Where do they park? And to drive over the hill, towing all their camping gear requires a lot of effort and planning, and many of them have been coming here for years. The impact on the economy of our community could be great. The entire Golden Bay thrives on the campers that flock to Pahara. Perhaps they will either not come here because it will become too much of a hassle, or they will park in the surrounding streets of Pahara, thus creating safety issues. But just in a different area and a narrower street, more congested area. There is not a car park. This is not a car park debate. This is a community issue, and we are concerned about the impact to our community. That's Amy's letter from Molly B's. So my wife and I own the Pahara store, which we lease off the TDC. Now, we've worked hard all our lives to get to where we are at the moment. And when this cycleway goes in, it is going to impact on our business. People go to convenience stores if it's convenient, and if they can't find a car park, they won't stop there. So we started the petition on the 28th of March this year to protest against the loss of car parking due to the new shared path. Now, in hindsight, it shouldn't have been called the Save the Pahara Store car parks. It should have been the Save the Pahara car parks. I've never had to fight for anything like this before in my life, really. I've found it very stressful over the last 8 weeks, having a council officer involved in the cycleway telling me he doesn't care about our business. It has felt like we've been fighting for everything we've worked for all our lives. Our concern is the whole process, the way the whole process has been handled by the TDC. There's no public consultation whatsoever. The petition that I created has 373 signatures. I ran through these yesterday and counted up, just try and work out how many of them are live in Pahara, Wainui area. And conservatively, there's 250 of those signatures are from the locals that live out there. And going by the stats on the TDC website, there's 520 residents in this area. So clearly the population is not happy with the way the TDC have handled this process. There's been no consideration given to the 4 businesses that will be directly affected by the lack of parking. And where do these cars go when the cycleway goes in? We're losing 8 generous car parks directly in front of our shop, being replaced with 4.5 parallel car parks. And I'm saying 4.5 because one of them is only 5 metres long. The other 4 are 6 metres long. And there's been talk of other car parks being added here and there, but they're taking away a lot more lines where existing parks already are. This is going to make it very difficult for mothers with young families coming to the shop if they've got to get their kids out of the car on the side of the road. If you've got more than one kid, you're going to have to be holding 2 hands at once or trying while you're trying to get your other kid out of the car. The elderly are going to have to that come to the shop. We have a disabled car park directly out in front of the shop. The elderly can park in there and get access to the shop easily. And it's going to make it a whole lot more difficult, especially only being able to park in front of the shop coming from one direction, as now you can park there quite easily from both directions with the generous car parks that we have, which make it easy for people getting in and out of their vehicles.
Dave, you're at 5 minutes, so if you could wrap up relatively quickly.
Rightio. Well, basically, we're here trying to save our community's car parks. There's 100 odd people we used to be able to park along that strip in Pahara. Now there's probably going to be 40. It's going to have a huge impact on our business. I'm estimating 200k lost turnover to our shop alone. And that's pretty much everything that we've built up that business in the 4 seasons we've been there gone. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming in. Jane Cooper.
Okay, good morning, Mayor King, councillors. Thanks for letting me come in and have a chat with you. I'm speaking on behalf of Jen, my wife, and myself as the owners and operators of the campground, and obviously your business partners. So obviously my concern is the progressive reduction in parking along Abel Tasman Drive, and it's not whether it's right now with the cycleway, it's a progressive thing over the last, whether it be 12, 18 months or 24 months, that's all out for debate at the moment and subject of a Lagoima request. So all these decisions have consequences, and without a doubt, there were 130, 150 parks along that drive, and there's going to be considerably less. So the removal of the angled parking is a major issue. They were all full, right? There wasn't, if you go there and if you've ever been there consistently over the 24th onwards, they were chocker. They were chocker for a reason, because they're needed. You've taken them away, right? That's going to have an impact. There isn't any doubt in the world about that. So at the end of the day, we can debate the pros and cons, but the cycleway is just another event where you're taking more parks out. So as a result of your actions and doing that, whether we like it or not, and regardless of which side you sit on here, because we want it recorded at council, we're not against cycleways. We think they're a great thing. They have a place, and they have a good place inside the community. But there's not been discussions here. I opened up with an invite to both staff and also at the Golden Bay community meeting, saying, come and talk to me about solutions. And I haven't had one approach out of you guys. And personally, I think that's disgraceful. So if you're doing the job, come and talk to people. There are some easy solutions, and you're not hitting the nail on the head. In fact, you're causing more problems, I think, because out of this, we're stuck with 2 options resulting from the actions of council. It's either people aren't going to come to Pahara, and that will be a shame, but if it's too hard and we're making it too hard and there's nowhere for them to park, then they ain't going to come. I think that's a reality. The second option is they'll come and they will cause a massive disruption to the locals, And I don't want to be the bugger that gets the phone calls that says your campers are parked over my driveway. But you know what? People are going to find a park. So if there's a need, you can't get rid of the need. It's either not going to come or it's going to go and make a nuisance of itself somewhere. So I'm just urging council to actually think this through a little bit more, because there are significant impacts for everybody. And that's, you know, I think at the end of the day, if you're going to take something away, then have a plan about how you're going to provide for it. And so I suppose for me, I just want to cap this off about saying, you know, I don't think you've got a mandate for this. You've heard quite strongly that there's a clear majority of the people that live in that space. So I don't know where we've been hearing from the local councillors that there's big support in this community, but you've just seen a petition presented that is over 50% of the population in the directly affected area, which is the community, that says that you don't have support for this. So I just urge you guys to think about that, and also urge you to just walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. So whether that's the retired couple who live up the back of Pahara that want to go to the pub and actually have a nice meal, but there's no parking, so they're not going to be able to go, right? They can't walk that far. So have a think about that option, or have a think about the resident who's in their driveway with a boat ready to go fishing, and some less than appropriate person parks partly over their driveway and they can't get out. And it's 6 o'clock Saturday morning, right? And there's nobody to ring, there's nobody to phone to police, say somebody's parked over my driveway. And again, they're going to find parks because there are no parks because you took them away and you didn't think about the options. Or whether in Dave's case, it's a tradie who just happens to call past and needs a pie, a drink, whatever, coming to him from the port or wherever they are. They can't call in. There's not enough parks there. And again, I'll urge you, there are options to solve those things, but when you don't come and talk to people, you're never going to find them. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Jane. Next up, we have Helen Vesper. Excuse me, can you just put the microphone on, Helen, just so those people on Zoom can, no, that's all good.
Sorry, I thought I had it on.
That's right.
From our point of view, the council seems to be at odds with the residents in the surrounding area of Pahara regarding the shared pathway and the impact it will have on the community. There has been no consultation with anybody living in the wider area that will be affected, such as Richmond Road, Watino Place and Kaihokio Place. Our requests for the council to talk at look at alternatives that will be which will have less impact on our narrow streets when parking outside the campers when it's reduced by 50 to 80 car parks. You are calling this pathway an exercise in safety and choice, but there seems to have been no thought about the residents as a whole. Every family that arrives here has either a caravan, a trailer, a boat or bikes on their cars. Some families have numerous vehicles. There will be no safety for parents that used to have safe streets for their children to ride in. These streets are not designed to be overflow parking for the motor camp. In correspondence with the CEO's office, I was told that if any parking restrictions were required in other streets, they will be considered based on actual parking behaviour. How will this help the residents when they can't get out of their driveway on Boxing Day? Do parking enforcement officers start at 6 a.m? The infrastructure of Pahara has a very fine balance in the busiest 2 months of the year. We all need to come up with a solution that benefits residents and does not create disharmony between residents and holidaymakers. Some visitors have been coming to Pahara for 50 plus years and spend a lot of money in the whole of Golden Bay. If parking issues make the bay an unfriendly place to stay, they will not come. The current design of the cycleway pathway between Takaka and Pahara is not fit for purpose, and a lot of people do not use it. Why would you want to extend something that doesn't work? It does seem that the council has very little knowledge and no solutions to the mess that will be created when the parking options outside the camp are cut in half. Have any of the council staff been to Pahara to see the impact and thought through this plan and its effect on the community? Any cycleway needs to be an asset, not a liability to the community of Pahara. A pathway on the seaward side of the camp running along the end of Selwyn Street path to the path at the Penguin Crossing would be a scenic asset that would benefit all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Right, that draws us to the finish of the public forum. Are there any declarations of interest for anything contained on today's agenda? If not, I'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes, the 27th of April and 2 sets of minutes from the 27th of April. And so as per that kind of new process, we can confirm, as long as we don't need to discuss confidential minutes in the open part of the meeting. So hence they are both contained in this part of the agenda. Someone like to move the minutes from the 27th of April? Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So the first item on the agenda. Oh, yes. I thought that was the. I'm happy to take them into a separate resolution if that's required. Right. So next up we have Matt Claridge and doing a presentation on the Te Araroa Trail. Welcome along today. So over to you. So I have this PowerPoint, about 10-15 minutes, and then we open up for any questions that anyone has. So welcome, Matt. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Kia ora, Tim and fellow councillors, thank you for having me along. Following a letter from Chairman of the Te Araroa Trust to Mayor King late last year, initiated a bit of a conversation, and obviously we're here today for me to share with you a little bit of information about Te Araroa. I'm not here to ask for money, I'm here to identify a couple of opportunities, but just to grow awareness of the trail, which has certainly grown in international recognition and slowly increasing awareness within New Zealand. Before I start, I always like to get a little indication, who's aware of Te Araroa? Great. Okay, I'll start with a video. It always helps. Oh, Alexis, do you want to have that? There we go, thank you. Thanks, Alexis. I'll firstly acknowledge the unfortunate discovery of the missing tramper's body that was in the Richmond Ranges, discovered early this morning, late last night. Really late in the season to be walking. There's a lot of circumstances surrounding his situation, but obviously it's in your backyard, and not a great thing to have happen for the trail or for anybody. There we go, I got it. Just briefly, some history of Te Araroa. Te Araroa started as a concept that was dropped into the Walkways Commission in 1975, and basically nothing happened for 20 years until a gentleman by the name of Jeff Chappell took a red line on a map and went and walked the North Island, did a whole lot of handshake deals, and then similarly walked the South Island, handshake deals, and effectively mapped Te Awaroa. It was officially opened in 2011 by the Governor-General, but I like to kind of refer to Te Awaroa as being quite similar to State Highway 1. It is never complete, and it probably never will be. It's a collection of trails that are joined together that cross public conservation land, iwi, private and council land, for which it's always been developed. The trail itself is 3,012 kilometres from Cape Reinga to Bluff. It visits 21 cities and towns. It's an incredibly unique experience as a through hike. Some of you may have heard of the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest, or the Camino Santiago in Spain, all of which are iconic through hikes in their own right. But Te Awaroa is quickly emerging, even in its infancy, as one of the most popular top 10 through hikes in the world, all of which has been achieved without any promotional work at all, which is a little bit frightening. Through the 150 days, we see the majority of walkers walk from north to south, and 80% international visitors to New Zealand. Some estimates on the economic impact of walkers. 4,000 walkers started their adventure in the 22-23 season, and at an estimate of about $130 to $180 per day, they're tipping in anywhere from 78 million to 108 million into the economy. That investment is concentrated. It's not spent on a daily basis. And I'll get to that opportunity for the Tasman district in a moment. A couple of maps just to demonstrate the route as it passes through the Tasman region. As far as top of the South Island goes, there's 308 kilometres of trail from Ships Cove to the Waiau Pass, and 158 kilometres sit within the Tasman region itself, which is 5% of the trail, and that's quite a substantive amount. All of that is on DOC PCL, which lends itself to a great situation for the region because DOC and Te Awaroa Trust have a memorandum of understanding for maintaining the trail. And we're just in the early stages of settling a local Te Awaroa Trust that will service the needs of the trail in the top of the South Island. And part of their role will be to form a strong relationship with DOC to support maintenance on the DOC estate. Obviously, DOC's under increasing pressure to manage assets, and Te Awaroa is a nice to have, but not an essential core business for them. The Richmond Ranges present the most difficult of terrain for Te Awaroa. It's one for which is, for most walkers, they build up to it, having either come south or head north. It is a tough walk, looking at about 9 days from Pelorus Bridge through to St Arnaud, and then another 7 days from St Arnaud going south to Boyle River. Therein really lies the opportunity as we're presenting it to territorial authorities for economic development. St Arnaud sits bang in the middle there, obviously, and is already servicing walkers well, but it could potentially be done better. So we're developing a concept called trail towns, and in trail towns having trail partners, those that offer services to benefit walkers, and typically they'll follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They need sleep, so they need somewhere to put their head. They need food and nourishment, so that might be to purchase food to cook themselves, but most importantly, after 7 or 8 days in the wilderness, they want to hit a cafe or restaurant and get a nice big feed, and they typically want to drink. Following that, it'll be rest and recreation. So what are the opportunities then for walkers to stay an additional night or two, and what are those opportunities available to them? So that's an area that we're interested in exploring, and we'll establish a relationship with the Nelson Tasman Regional Economic Development Agency so that we can be part of destination management plans. Te Aroha Trail is developed, so the Trust is now developing the trail as a regenerative trail. I suppose if we were to look at other trail concepts, we're the poor cousin of the cycle trails. We don't have the glamour, we don't have the pull that the cycle trails have, but based on 4,000 walkers a year at a growth rate of 10% per annum, we're going to hit over 10,000 walkers by the year 2030. 10,000 walkers coming through a region within a 2-month period is quite a significant number of walkers, and that creates issues for infrastructure, but also opportunities for economic gain. So the regenerative approach that we're taking is one for which the philosophy of the trail being improved as a result of walkers on it, as opposed to degraded, is simple from a physical perspective, but a little bit more difficult from the social point of view. So we know that economically more walkers contribute to the community, but from a social perspective, that may not be the case. And so we're working to develop and implement the regenerative trail strategy in partnership with local communities so that we can see other aspects of regeneration occur around the trail corridor, not just the physical trail itself. The development of Iti Te Aroha, which is section walks, is a new initiative that we've started developing, much like the Great Walks that you'll be familiar with. Much of Te Aroha is a great walk. In fact, Te Aroha is the greatest walk of all. However, we're developing 3 to 4 day walks that we will position for regions to be able to take hold of and market and promote themselves, that will draw walkers in for the specific purpose of walking, yes, Te Aroha, but also providing a benefit to that community. We see the Nelson Lakes region, or Nelson Lakes National Park, and therefore the Tasman district, as being a really central part of one of those. The Richmond Ranges are tough, but actually Sanana presents an opportunity to work both north and southbound from, for walkers to come to walk a segment that will see them here for around a week all up. That ties in nicely with the new market that we're looking to attract. Te Aroha walkers often get a bad name, and that's because of the pre-career segment that will go out and walk Te Aroha and look to do it as cheap as possible. We're more interested in the market that's sort of age 45 plus, late career, not quite as much time on their hands as if they were early retirees, but certainly have the inclination to be in the outdoors, engage in ecotourism and spend money. So we'll be developing Iti Te Aroha with that demographic in mind. And as I alluded to, trail town partnerships, we see Sanana as being a really special place that we can develop a stronger association with Te Aroha. There are already businesses doing a great job providing services for walkers, but we think that there are more services that could be offered that will be viable for a business, from a business point of view, because of the increasing number of walkers that we are seeing. And that, my friends, is the little bit of information about Te Aroha. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, so open for questions. Councillor Mailing and Councillor Bryant.
Yeah, well, Matt, thanks. I've walked bits of it, and some of it's a few years since I was up in Rintoul and Slatey Peak, that's for sure. I think I was last up there on my 50th birthday, just for the sake of it. So maintenance of the huts up there, and certainly advice that you give people, because thinking of Rintoul at this time of the year, that's not a place you want to be. So are you limiting what time of the year that you're advising people to be up there?
Yeah, so we have an official season, which is effectively mid-September through till the end of April. Those that are heading southbound, typically the Richmond Ranges experience their busiest period in January, February. So our advice is to stay within season. Unfortunately, the walker who got found overnight was out of season. As for maintenance, that's probably one of the biggest issues we have. Actually, put it back to assets on the trail. Yeah, so accommodation, huts been overrun or not enough beds, not enough huts at appropriate locations on the trail, and then the condition of those huts. So we work in partnership with DOC, but as I alluded to, we all know the issues DOC's got at the moment. The Backcountry Hut Trust do a fantastic job of renovating, developing huts, but they are now under financial strain and their future is tenuous. So we have an interest in that area. The turnover of the trust isn't such that we can invest in asset development, but we certainly, with our volunteer network, which is why we're establishing the Nelson Marlborough Regional Trust, is to be able to support those sort of activities.
And just to follow up, one, I know some of those huts are relatively small. I think the last time I was in Starville was 6 berth. And the other thing is the benefit, I was at a meeting with the with a presentation from Bill Gilbertson, who has done a lot of work on trails and cycling and walking. And the former Wellington mayor was there, and she'd walked this your trail all the way. Well, it's where they stop and come out and spend money. And she'd come down from Starville into our area and spent a few days here to recoup and then carry on. So there are obviously specific points along the trail where people take their break and go back to civilization rather than continue walking.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think a couple of previous Wellington mayors have walked Te Aroha, so I'm not sure which one you're talking about. But
Wade Brown, I think.
Okay. Yes, and so just from Hackett Hut, it's about 20-25 minutes drive from here too, so it is really close. We need to identify out options for walkers on the Richmond Ranges. We don't do that well at the moment, so if the weather's precarious, yes, there's a hut option, but also there's got to be an out option too. So the opportunities for the Tasman district or the Richmond and surrounding towns is there, but we haven't done a good job of connecting local businesses, trail partners, with walkers. The trail app is our best means to communicate with walkers whilst they're on the trail. It will be the trusted and official navigation and wayfinding tool. It will also be a marketing tool for local businesses as well.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, I've been interested in this as the Murchison Lakes Ward Councillor. Just around and the Rotorua community, Sanana, call it what you like, is very supportive of the trail and would potentially like to engage more. There is groups like the Rotorua Community Council where issues have been raised around the trail, but it would be good for you to engage with them at some stage because a lot of those people are business people in the township. Perfect. One of the issues that has been raised, there must be a section of on road there, is there, from down near the Rainbow Pinafore, there is station on road, or they walk up to the lake, and it is a safety concern because these people tend to walk day and night. And is there anything that you could do around just highlighting them that is a challenging section of road for both themselves and motorists that come onto them?
Yeah, thanks for raising that. So we have a relationship with Waka Kotahi. They invest in taking Te Aroha off-road where there are safety issues. Sometimes that investment goes as far as putting signage up, which is helpful. So two things. I'd like to engage with that Rotorua community business group. And second is I'll talk to Waka Kotahi about that specific area.
I can, we'll have your email. I can give you the contact address or even myself for that. And I expect they'd even be keen for you to meet with them at their meeting, whether that's by Zoom or in person, and just have a discussion around what the community can do for you.
That'd be ideal. I'm meeting with the Huronui Tourism Board this afternoon in Hanmer, and tomorrow, similar group that's formed in Methven, all around the same concept.
Excellent. Thank you.
Chris, Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Great to have you presenting to us, and it's a fantastic thing, isn't it? The whole business. And I notice here in the bay, there's quite a few actually older women as they retire have gone and walked it. You know, quite a mission, but it's pretty inspiring for people to take it on. I just wondered about a couple of things. One is, you know, back in the day, we'd have people turn up here in the bay for to walk the Heathy in a pair of jandals and you know, a grocery bag in their hand or something. And just that's true. But I just wonder, do you find that people are generally prepared well enough? Most people undertaking it, old Kiwi trampers will, won't they? But I just wondered if there's an issue of people turning up unprepared for what they're actually going through.
So that's probably the circumstances with the tramper that was found overnight, but that relates to some previous issues that he had on the trail. Typically, the through hikers are considered, well, there's two variables that they're interested. One is weight, and second is distance. And so the less weight they carry, the more distance they can cover in a day. So the lightweight, ultralight hiking community is certainly a bit of an issue, but some of that gear is incredibly good. It's a balance between experience and familiarity with gear. And yes, some people do turn up underprepared, others turn up overprepared, and they shed their pack down 90 Mile Beach in the first 3 days.
Yeah, I think I've known of people with 7 kg on their back as they go through, you know, with incredible gear. Just wondering what can TDC do to support and sort of, you know, be you know, a good partner in this, and just wondering what other councils might be doing.
So most other councils have connected myself with the sort of the local tourism group or the economic development agency. That really, I think, is where the best interest lies. Like I said, we're not here for funding. We're certainly not established in the same way that New Zealand cycle trails are, where they have a significant infrastructure circuit. But Te Aroha is moving from having been solely focused on the condition of the track to now looking at through a different lens, which involves the tourism and a bit more of a holistic sort of view. So just support for Te Aroha full stop is really what we're after.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Shandon.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Obviously, I live in a pretty beautiful place. Just one question, well, two questions. The little blue piece over North Island on the red line, what's that? And the other one was, EPIRBs something that is, are they a mandatory thing, or is that just obviously up to the individual?
Yeah, so PLBs, it's our recommendation that you don't walk without. Yeah, it is difficult because we don't own the trail. And in some circumstances, people are on Te Aroha, but they're not walking Te Aroha, or vice versa. And so we probably have quite a reasonable level of accountability in terms of how we educate, because we do market a brand and a walk. But then again, we have low levels of accountability because we don't own the land. So it's not to say we divest ourselves of responsibility, but we do what we can to educate, and we're putting together a new website. I'm going to be recruiting for a communications manager soon, so that walker education, especially around understanding walker expectations, because a lot of Te Aroha is across iwi land, and so you don't have a right to walk across it. It's a privilege, and we need to educate accordingly. With regard to the blue line, that's probably the Wanganui River, and there's other blue lines on the map in the South Island which are bypasses. So the Trust's advice is that you do not cross the Rakaia Rangitata rivers, and it's a safety issue. And we've had rescues because people have ignored that advice.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Just in terms of the numbers, so is the 4,000 number the people who walk the entire track?
Yeah, that's right. I probably left an important number out. There's 250,000 that we estimate that walk it on a daily or sort of.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to work out, because 4,000, I was trying to work out the 78 million. So
yes.
So there are a lot of people who utilise parts of the track, either in conjunction with other walking opportunities in their regions where the trails either overlap or connect. So that's a much bigger figure.
Absolutely. And so to develop the new market that we need to bring to New Zealand or bring to the trails, we need better walker data, and that's what we're looking to source and develop.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Right, thanks very much for the presentation. Thanks
Thank you.
for being available to answer questions. I don't know how quickly you have to exit the building, but if you're here in 20 minutes, we'll break for a cup of tea, and I'm sure there's a number of people might be quite keen to catch up with you.
I'm meeting the new Nelson Marlborough Regional Trust at 10:30, but I'll wait around till then if that's all right.
Oh, that's all good. I mean, we can probably break a little bit earlier, so we'll just see how the next couple of items go. So thank you. Right. So next up, and bearing in mind that, you know, if you go quickly, we can catch up with Matt for a cup of tea. So incentive all round. I'll come across it firstly to the Chief Executive's update.
Thank you. I'll just take the report as read and through the chair, welcome any questions.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. I hope it's okay to ask a question.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly okay. Short question.
Short question. Under 6.3, in terms of developing a business case in conjunction with MFE and LG&Z, the question that arises in my mind is, you know, business cases can be large, complex beasts. They require a considerable amount of investment in order to produce a good business case. So who is funding the preparation of the business case?
MFE are funding the preparation of the business case in full. So we have only played a role in, I guess, representing or playing a driving role for the sector. So putting our hands up and saying we see a real need for this across the sector, and we've brought Taitura into it also to represent the sector, but we're staying at the table so that MFE have confidence that there's a council, you know, that councils and other councils that will become involved have skin in the game.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's great that we can use our great expertise that we have to help, and great that we're not having to pay for it. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for you to Janine CEO, just in relation to the flood event and the response here, I think councillors, elected members should acknowledge the work that the team did. It was a really good response and everyone stepped up when they needed to. So that is appreciated. And some of them worked extended hours. And then if I go on to 12, health, safety and wellbeing at 12.1, it talks about aggressive behaviour towards staff in the field. That's a concern, and I think that's possibly a reflection of a lot of people are under pressure out there for one reason or another. What are we doing to manage that? Because I don't see that decreasing, unfortunately, in the future, and it's going to be more of a challenge.
Through the chair, we're tackling that on many grounds. So obviously a core health and safety approach, like how we're thinking about managing risk, how we use things like body cams and risk plans, and a whole range of measures that, you know, we could go into a lot more, and perhaps in a future meeting give you a more fuller update. In the current times, yes, I think it's fair to say every council is experiencing an increase in this aggressive behaviour. We're also looking across particular groups, or I'll guess maybe call it activist type of groups that may present a higher risk to staff. So we're trying to maintain some visibility of that. But really it comes down to being super vigilant and to following processes and protocols. Yesterday at a all staff briefing, we had staff present to us on the rural community meetings that have been held recently, and in the main they went really well, but there was one incident you're probably aware of where it was more difficult to manage, and I'm really pleased to say that the staff had really thought comprehensively about this. They had a very good health and safety plan, and as a result the risk was extremely well managed, and we wanted to share that with all staff so that we can remind everybody that that we must be really super vigilant around these events.
So it's great to hear you being proactive around that, because what we don't want is some incident to get out of hand is the worry for us. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor Kinnermont.
Thank you, through the chair. Clause 11.2. Can you explain to me the difference between FTEs, 396, head count of 415?
The difference is around actual bodies. So we have some part-time people, and so a full FTE is a full-time equivalent. So there could be 2 people performing a full-time equivalent role.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think if you report, Janine, when we have events, emergency events potentially happening, and they get signalled, and we think, oh, what's going to happen? I just it's just so pleasing to have such confidence in our emergency management team and people and our folk involved in all of that. Honestly, when I heard about the first Auckland event, and the I want to be careful, but just some of the comments made, by the manager of that up there and the mayor and things, it just seemed just so disorganised, or just, and I know it's the competence has probably come, unfortunately, through a whole lot of events, but I just feel very good about the excellent level with which we're served by. And I know that we've got Joe was going to come and he will still to the community board in Golden Bay and present about emergency management. And I'm not sure whether out in our communities generally, I think people who have had direct contact will know, but I just wonder whether there's a little more we could do to, as a reassuring thing too, to let people know this is what happens, and I think people don't quite get a handle on just what that structure, that's the structure is of that whole system.
Yeah, so apologies for butting in, but I was going to cover that in my report, but absolutely. So post this event, I've talked to the publicity communications staff to say it's a really good example of an event where we didn't declare an emergency, but actually it involved a significant amount of people at work. That there's costly consequences, despite the fact it never reached an emergency, and explaining what it is we do when we declare emergencies, why we don't.
Yeah.
So yes, that is a work stream that I've asked us to, through our, it's the website, through Newsline, to start a series of discussions which just highlight exactly what you've just raised. So.
Cool. I've just a couple of other things, and I'll be a little briefer if that's all right.
So yes, that's all right. But what we'll do is we'll then break and have a cup of tea, take the opportunity to catch up with Matt, and then we'll come back with Councillor Walker's question post the break. So,
okay.
Yeah.
In terms of, abusive staff, Councillor Bryant's right. We don't want things escalating into a terrible event, but also we need to have a zero tolerance to this as well, because there is the ongoing impact of people being exposed to this stuff over and over and over. And I did see the recent little video that came around from another council that we put out, I think, and it's just, a dreadful state of affairs that people feel like they can respond to stuff like that. Great for the awards nominations, local government awards, well done. And the Kahui Hununga team set up we've come a long way, Iwi around the region of, worked for many years wanting to get a kaihotu in place, and to have our team just getting stronger to be working in all the areas that we need to. That's heartening. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hill. So we'll break for 10 minutes and come back at past, and we'll continue with any further questions on the CEO update. Thank you. So, I was going to go to Councillor Walker, but Councillor Walker, so we'll come back to Councillor Walker. I'll go to Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, through the chair. So I just had a question, if I may, in relation to the petition that we had in our papers at Pahara. So I guess I'm not completely clear in my mind where we're currently at with the project. So we've obviously got a plan. We've heard from some representatives from the community. Obviously, there's the range of views, including the Golden Bay Community Board. I myself have, stayed over there with my bike, and I know what I've done. But where are we at, and what's our plan moving forward?
So where we are at with the Pohara Cycleway, and I'll encourage Richard to step in if we need more detail, but that cycleway, that shared pathway project is progressing. I maybe can take a little bit of a moment to talk about the overall transport choices projects that we've had, because I've found myself very immersed in these since my return to council. And what I would say is that we are, as you will be aware, that access to government funding to fund the total projects was time limited. And so we put in a range of project requests and had some approved. What we are very aware of is the need to really clearly communicate from the outset and to consult with communities and those affected in a really carefully staged way, including the timeframes required to do the project. And that is the learning that we are increasingly getting, and it is forcing us to consider resets in some places that we have these projects. Now, and that includes Motueka. Now, Pohara is different. And the reason it is different is that there is a shed or a cycleway that is not complete. It was unfinished, and it was always anticipated that that would be extended. There is also very clear, long-standing safety issues with the movement of traffic and people walking, running and cycling through that township. So this is an opportunity to address both. Most probably importantly is that the ward councillors and the community board have conveyed to us a high level of community support. So we have a very clear level of support from our authorisers and sort of driving that project forward. Unfortunately, what you've heard with the petition is you've heard a very firm view by the Pohara store owner, which he has shared very widely, that this is going to affect his business. Now, that is not our experience of cycleways, but he has that firmly held view. He has been probably more involved than I've seen any store owner or business owner in the design of where we are today. So he has made many suggestions which we have incorporated, or we've tried to meet him halfway and address some of his concerns. The other issue we have with Pohara is that reference to the car parks, and I think you heard 102 car parks. Those car parks are not legitimate car parks. They are land road reserve, and Richard may comment more on this, that is being used for angle parking, also increasing the safety issues. So we have issues being presented as fact, which are not quite facts.
If I may, so are we of the view that actually whose role is it to actually provide a public car park? So if in actual fact we are removing an opportunity to park on something which is never designated as a car park, is that a situation where you have a community that obviously people like to go there, visit their friends in the campground, maybe access the water? Is there a public car park, or do we need a public car park?
Richard.
That's a good question. I think one of the challenges we have with the campgrounds like that is that normally campgrounds, and I've frequented quite a few of them, is that they provide the extra car parking if they don't want cars and boats next to the campground. Unfortunately, Pohara, there's a habit is if you can't park it in the campground, you park it along Tasman Drive. And if you've been down there over the 6 weeks of Christmas, New Year, there's cars and boats angle parked all the way down, some of them hanging out on the road.
So anybody that wants to walk down there, either has to walk on the other side of the road, across people's driveways, or walk down the street, and that happens in cycles alike. So what we're intending to do with the cycleway is we've had a sign up there for parallel parking only, and I understand there has been some compliance tickets issued for people that haven't done that. But with the cycleway going in, there will still be room to parallel park between the cycleway and the edge of the road. So we're not taking the parking away completely. The cycleway is going to be reasonably close to the fence along the front of the campground, and that's what's going to happen now. In terms of the reduction of number of car parks, unfortunately, the camp owner and the like is probably going to have to try and accommodate it within the property he's got now. Or, as he says, people can park on some of the other side streets. I mean, it's public space and people can park there. So as far as out in front of the shop, he's actually getting extra car parks than what he's got now. He mentioned he had 5 and a bit. He's got this 4, and he talked about 5 metres being half a car park. I'm not sure quite that's correct. You're going to have 5 parallel, and then he's got some angle parks on the other side of the campground. I think there's 4 angle parks in there. And we're also putting parallel car parks on the other side of the road as well. So there's another 4 or 5 going in there well. So at the end of it all, not only the cycleway, there's actually going to be marked another 10 or 11 car parks around the shop area. So we've actually worked through with him, and he's raised those issues, and we try to accommodate those as much as we can. I know I've been working with Councillor Hill on it as well, and she requested the car parking on the other side of the street, and we've looked at that, and we're looking to install those as well. So we believe all the issues that have been raised have been dealt with. I think the petition that was raised, when you actually read through the top of the petition, it's probably not as accurate as what it could be in terms of the messages conveyed. So people have signed it basically on not quite the full facts, and that hasn't helped the situation either.
So just a last point, and now I've got Councillor Hill.
Certainly, I appreciate. Thank you. I guess I understand all of that. Thank you. It's still, I've still got a question left in my mind around whose role is it to provide public car parking, and is there adequate public car parking at Pohara? So I don't need an answer right now, but I feel as though I asked that question, but I wasn't clear to me that I actually had answered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I've had concerns around that strip of road before I was on council myself. You just sort of drive through there. It's been a nightmare for a long time. And since being on council, I've been approached by a number of people really concerned around the safety of children, particularly walking and biking along the edge. So the change has already been made to parallel parking along the camp fence. So that was done last season as a result of concern around safety. And the other concern I've had expressed to me by a number of people is that the camp is occupying road reserve. So where the fence is currently, if it was on its correct boundary, would be way back into the camp, like a significant distance into the camp. We'd lose income, and some people have agitated for the fence to be actually put where it should be. So we've got a situation where the camp is camping on road reserve, and also having people in the past have had campers not accommodating the cars within the camp. So that's been an issue for me personally, and since I've been on council, and for others. So this isn't, this has been an ongoing sort of complex thing for a while. When the funding opportunity came along, the community board in Golden Bay just went, oh, thank goodness, yay, that's our first priority. Let's get that pathway finished. And because I had approached Jamie about, where would we be looking to be able to get a pathway through there, was, it wasn't going to happen for a while. So in terms of the public parking, there are areas, Pohara Beach is a long beach, and there are areas where there's access to parking at the golf club, Selwyn Street, there's significant parking there. This side of the Ban Rotunda, opposite the hall. So along there, people can pull up, by the beach. The petition, I can understand Dave's concerns that there might be a loss of business. I don't think that's going to be realised, and I hope that I hope that's what comes to pass, and not that there is any lack of business. When changes are made, any changes in the bay here, we just get, there's often quite a resistance to it, and I acknowledge there is a change to right outside the shop. But I'd say that reading the petition, so I read through all of the comments on it, and people are suggesting the shop will have to close down. There'll be congestion in Tākaka from all those people driving to town. Like, it's gotten a bit out of hand, to be fair. And I think it's great for councillors to sort of get a wider perspective of what's all of the matters that are happening there. I think overall there's actually the similar amount of parking, or it's just that people, the tradie, will need to just stop on the other side of the road if they're going to Tākaka and walk across the road for the pie. So it's a shame when things are getting over-egged, and that tends to detract from, what the real concerns are. But in terms of the whole safety of that area, I think what's being put in is going to improve the safety, certainly not make it worse.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Butler, have you got anything to add from the Golden Bay perspective before I go to Councillor Dowler?
Yeah, I'd just say that I have sent an email to Nick Chin, who's going to dig into the background of the campground fence being moved out, on the basis that it would then allow campground parking inside the camp. So he's going to try and find the basis for that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, just one point. The store owners talked about a disability car park. It was outside the shop. Hopefully there's going to be one reinstated close by so that they can deal with that. And the scenario of the warehouse coming to Motueka and all the shops are going to go broke, the town hummed. So, what do you do?
Thank you. Councillor Dowler, comment re the disabled car park.
Perhaps this might give you some assurance of how closely I've been involved in all of this, trying to understand all the ins and outs of it. Yes, a disabled car park is available if they would like it to, but the monitoring of that, my understanding is it has shown that it's not widely used. And so if you make it a disabled car park, you actually eliminate one of the car parks. So can certainly do it if that's what's required.
My previous role as a vehicle certifier, I was certifying probably 20 to 25 disability vehicles per year, all new vehicles for new people. So it is a rising thing.
Okay, thank you. Any on this particular topic, is there further conversation? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And yes, through you, Mr. Chair, it is on this topic. So my understanding is disabled car park is slightly bigger than a standard one. So how would we be accommodating it if it's not marked?
That one, through the chair, I can't answer. We haven't marked those car parks yet, I believe. So there would be room, I expect, for that sort of flexibility.
Yeah, I think the point that was made is if you mark one car park, then no one else can park in it. So it's just a matter of if that is what the community / the shop owner / the council wants, clearly we could mark one of those parks. It's just a question of, is that what the council wants, the community wants, the shop owner wants, etc. So that, rather than Janine being required to give an answer, I think the question has been raised, which will obviously now go into the mix to add to all the issues that seem to be in the mix. Right, is there anything else on this particular part of the? Right, if not, Councillor Mayling, you have another question?
It's not a question, it's a thank you actually to Janine and Richard and the staff. At that weather event the other weekend, 2 weeks ago, I was at Easby Park at 7:15. The contractors were there. They were doing the work. They've been there during the night. We put in an alarm, and you kept residents and houses safe because of the work they've done. And that was really appreciated. And we need to acknowledge that, because we had a problem in August where 9 houses got affected by water. We've got a solution that they haven't finally come up with the final one yet, but I know that they're working on it. And it was really, really important. And the staff did a great job very early. And I know I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, monitoring the water levels, because Reservoir Creek comes behind my house, so I do monitor those water levels. But I know our people were up there early and they did a very good job, and that's much appreciated. And people don't realise they're there in the middle of the night doing it. So, because it doesn't just rain during the day, that's for sure. So it was well done. And I know Dave Stevenson was there and he was monitoring other places as well. And it'll be great when Nelson City finish their little bit, so that we don't have those baffles at Champion Road going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. Is there anything further? If not, is someone prepared to move the receipt of the move? Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Dowell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So next up is the Mayor's report. So there's one significant typo at the start, which says, as I write this report, which probably should have read as Robin writes this report. Which I missed in my, my overview, my proofreading of my report. But look, just to follow on the comments that have already been made about response, I think we are incredibly fortunate to be able to have the confidence, and it's not just the civil defence structure or our own staff; it's the other agencies that all play a part in this previous event. Coming back to the point raised earlier by Councillor Hill, FENS were the lead agency because a declaration, there was no declaration of emergency. So those other agencies are the lead. Civil defence plays a supporting role, and then our staff obviously support that entire effort. So it's thanks to all the partner agencies, all the people involved. I think the key thing is that we didn't declare an emergency, and yet there were hundreds of people over the 5 days from all of the different agencies, both councils, police, fire and emergency, other NGOs who were involved in either the response directly, contractors involved in working to either prepare, respond, or repair afterwards, welfare that is set up. If necessary, wasn't needed in a lot of cases, but it was set up and prepared. So it's a significant cost. It's a significant time commitment. Council staff who are often running on those 12-hour shifts, they then get time off in lieu. There's a whole flow-on and consequential effect of these events, and even if they never reach the status of an emergency. And I think that's part of what we need to keep communicating with the community. So again, really thankful to everyone who was involved, that the way it was handled. And again, just I guess one big comment, our hydrology department plays a massive role in these sort of events. The hours that they put in, the reliance that the whole system has on their advice, based on information they receive that they then have to interpret. They have to make some very challenging judgment calls when they're advising that entire structure, whether it's FENS, whether it's civil defence, about what they expect to see. It's a very, very difficult position to be in, because if you get these calls wrong, you can either end up with an overreaction, which people are critical of, or worse, you end up with an underreaction that if things go wrong, again, people will be very critical of. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that they do a fantastic job on behalf of both councils. So it's our hydrology team who provide that advice and input, whether it's about the Mai Tai, whether it's about Nelson related issues, as well as obviously our own. So I just want to make sure that that's directly acknowledged alongside everyone else's contribution. I think that the challenges, and coming back to a point that I think Councillor Mailing made, the issue that we face is not the response or the readiness or that particular component. It's increasingly, what do we do in terms of our rivers management, flood management, preemptive? This is an area where there's never going to be enough money, but at the moment, I think we're probably in a position where and it's an obvious conversation that will come up through the annual plan and long-term plan, no doubt, how we fund that, and whether that's in relation to urban communities or rural communities, flood protection or erosion protection, whichever way you want to look at it. It is becoming increasingly challenging to, I guess, to work with the community and landowners to ensure that they are prepared as well as we are, and how we fund that going forward and what role central government plays is obviously going to be a big conversation. So that's really the only thing I wanted to touch on, other than happy to answer any questions or anything else that's come up in my report. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. This is what I was going to raise before on Janine's report, but it probably sits better here. So I guess for me it's a question around process and procedures, because I kind of obviously as a councillor we're on call for our community, and when there's a weather event or any event we get calls. So when I reflect back on when the tornado rips through, I was so well informed. Whether I was in Australia, here, wherever I was kept in the loop. And if anyone contacted me, I could give them a sound, informed response. And I don't get why the tornado we were informed, and the last weather event we were left in the dark, or in my case, in a flooded garage. I want to know what the process is as a councillor. What activates us being kept in the loop of information?
That's not
depending.
So if you weren't informed, that's my fault. So
it's not a blame game. I just want to know, because how do I respond to people?
Our obligation is to inform you. So my key role really in this is not to be, in the direct response. It is the communication component, and a significant component of that is communicating with you. So if that's something I need to improve, then absolutely we'll take that on board in terms of sharing the information that I receive, and making sure that you're in the same position too, because that is your key role, is not out there, using a shovel or clearing the floodwaters. It is about communicating where to get advice, what's going on, what are the circumstances, how can people access the services they need. So that's something we can absolutely take on board to improve, to ensure that you can do. Because I think the key thing that came out of a number of these other emergencies is that our role is all about communicating and directing people to the right places, as opposed to being, kind of out there. Well, that doesn't mean you can't go out there and obviously help and assist your community, but your key role is communication, and we have to enable that. So that's good feedback. Other questions in relation to my report?
I've got a couple of comments, if I may, and I think Gary wants to go on the list.
Yep, definitely, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. So just following on a couple of comments you made, just in relation to hydrology, I actually went over and talked to them and thanked them yesterday. And one of the things they did allude to me that I wasn't aware of, they actually had some technological challenges during the event as well, but yet they managed to provide all of that information. So that is really amazing. And obviously they're going to get that sorted. But it's like, and I think it was caused by the overload, which we previously had in August 21 or 22. And so it's ongoing work.
So I'll come to Steve, because absolutely right. There was issues with interaction, particularly with the community, again, in terms of information and communication. People all go to our website to see the river flows, and that means that it did crash. So Steve, can you just highlight what we're doing to ensure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, it's through you, Mr. Chair. Apologies, I'm a little bit on the hook for this one, because there was some meetings late last week and earlier this week about it. There's a couple of issues at play. One is our website, because that's where the information is presented to, and the architecture of the website is struggling with the demands that we get, not just from members of the public who are looking at the rainfall and river flow data, but also from organisations who want to do a thing called screen scrape and get a large volume of data off our website. So we're doing some work to re-architect that. The other issue that we have is the other systems that someone referred to earlier on that feed information in. So one of the ones that we use is a thing called Hilltop. And Hilltop is an environmental database that contains rainfall information from around our region, and it's something which services a number of different regional councils throughout the country. And its architecture, it's not owned by us, it's a private thing. And its architecture doesn't lend itself to the kind of updates that we need to provide to our website. So we've got two problems: the speed with which we can get the data from the source, and then the overload on the website. So we're trying to address both of those things. There are
regional, this information is with regional councils. There are regional councils that do a really good job at it. And we've engaged with ECAN particularly to see how they do it, see if we can emulate that. And we're working as quick as we can.
Excellent. That's great news. Great to hear
It's
that.
also important that we link other agencies to that way of accessing information. So yes, there's the public who are interacting with it, often just out of interest as opposed to but it's massively important for other agencies who are looking to utilise that information to inform their own decision making. So
a classic example of that is on the Buller catchment, where Buller district, and a lot of people down there are looking at our website to see what's coming. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you're right. It's across multiple regions. And the other thing you just did touch on, the rivers and the issues around that. Yesterday I was at the Upper Motueka, close to the confluence of the Motueka and Wangapeka up high. And yeah, there's a real issue in our rivers now with these number of floods, and there's a lot of work to be done, and we're trying to engage with these landowners and get some sensibility around how we do that, but it's an ongoing challenge, as you alluded to, and we're hoping to address that going forward.
yes, which will probably involve significantly more money from some unknown source. Councillor Dowler and then Councillor Butler.
Oh, Steve was on the table.
Oh, Steve, just before Barry.
I was just going to add to that. One of the things that we've done a couple of times now is petitioned government for an additional rain radar in our region so that we can provide better forecasting information. And additional rain radar would have given us a much better indication of what was going to happen up the Maitai in the August event. The Met Service has prioritised upgrading Wellington, which they just completed. That does do something. What Marty and the boys are trying to do in the hydrology team now is to see if we can take advantage of shipping radars that are either present in our region at the time of an event, or whether or not we can buy one, because they're considerably less than a rain radar, and they'll give us a very small footprint, but they would be quite useful, for example, of seeing rainfall coming across from Golden Bay into Tasman Bay. So we're looking at what we can do there cost effectively as well.
Thank you. Yes, another issue that we will continue to promote up the food chain to them with the bigger bucks. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thanks. Just a process issue, really. So the community board in Golden Bay have got there's a plan for Joe Kennedy to come and explain how the systems work for Golden Bay. But I'm just thinking that maybe that could be a wider session to include other maybe council staff as well, so that we could bring in these other dimensions that we've just been talking about today, or would it be adequate for Joe to come and explain all those things?
Yeah, but I think in terms of the overall response, Joe should be able to provide the overview and the detail. I think coming back to Councillor Hill's previous point, we need to, in terms of the wider community, just reinforce that with some information about how we do what we do, why we do what we do, who's involved in doing what we do, particularly around that whole emergency. Because one of the issues that's emerging is now emergency declarations are starting to be driven by communities' expectations / social media. Everyone's like, why isn't there an emergency? And it's important to make it clear that when we declare emergency, it really does need to be an emergency. Otherwise, we end up in the little boy cried wolf scenario where we're constantly doing something and it loses its impact. So I think that whole, again, coming back to communication and information is something that we need to focus on, particularly because this event wasn't an emergency, despite all the resources that were involved in responding to it.
Okay, so we need to look at this as a package, really, with different components. Yeah,
Agreed.
Thanks.
Councillor Dowler, then Councillor Hill.
I assume that the reason we all got Teams put on our phone is for that communication to happen.
It's one of the methods. Actually, I don't think I used Teams much over the course of that 5 days, but I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of information that comes in that we just need to work out how we're going to disseminate that out to all and sundry so that everyone's getting the same regular updates, post the briefings that happen on an emergency when it's often twice a day, once a day, or it could be once every couple of days, but post those briefings, circulating the information that come out of them is something that clearly we need to improve. Is that, yeah. And it may be via Teams, so it may be via email, it may be via text, or a combination of all of the above. Right, Councillor Kinnemont, and then, oh, sorry, Councillor Kinnemont, then Councillor Hill.
Just very quickly, thank you, Trinity. You've echoed my thoughts about these issues here. And I'm just wondering what kind of priority, if any, you would put on your sorting the system out. Is it going to be something sorted out before winter or Christmas? Or?
You know, well, Christmas is a good time because it's kind of, you know, there are so many options about Christmas, this one, the next one. In terms of the communication stuff, like tomorrow, obviously, so yeah, something we just need to, and it's not a difficult thing to do. It's just something we need to prioritise. So that's relatively straightforward. In terms of the tech and the access to the information and the relationship between like the website, information in, information out, I'm hoping pretty jolly quickly, but Steve, do you have a time frame?
Pretty jolly quickly, sir. A good technical term. I'll look. I don't know. I'll go back and ask the guys, and I will put an update in the councillors' update tomorrow afternoon about what we've got ahead, and give you more details next week. But an update on Friday.
Thank you. All good. Right, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a little addition around the comms and, you know, around how all the emergency stuff works. And I have had some conversations about this already, and I think it can come up when Joe comes to the board. Our comms tend not to be ward specific very much, and I know that in the Bay here, you know, and maybe the August event, I'm not sure which it was actually, but where people were sort of, you know, on the community page saying, oh, what's going on? Is anyone going to help? Who, you know, and actually we had the whole sort of office down there was, you know, the unit was, you know, had been stood up and was all ready to go, and people just didn't know that part. So there's something in the comms that relate to specific areas I think that we can improve. I'd like to be involved in that. And we did have Sarah and lovely chap, can't think his name, come over to the board about some other comms things and came up there a bit. So there's just something to tidy up there, I think, and not just having generic posting, although I know it's not as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other challenges. When an emergency is declared, you get resources coming from everywhere. So the August event, emergency, the project, was it PIM, information and something or other, the communication function in the EOC was well resourced at times. But if I look in, when I go in there, the information, the desk, the people we sit in information is probably the least populated desk, Jenna, if I'm, you know. So, and because communication is a crucially important component of all the other bits, logistics, planning, operations. So it's really good feedback just to ensure that, because in order to do that, you need resources. So there's obviously the council resources. In an emergency, there's their own, civil defence have their own communications resources. And it's just ensuring that A, there's enough resources, and B, that they're delivering the communications that are adding value, not just firing out lots of information that isn't necessarily hitting the mark. So I think in the review response, which follows all of these things, that's all good information that we can take back.
Can I just add to that, in that last event, the civil defence team did actually produce situation reports. And it's probably not their role to let all the councillors know, it's probably our role at the centre. That's what we need to pick up.
Thanks.
I'm just having a look through. I recall that when we were setting up our waters team and sent people over to Taka, I recall that I did send a note out to councillors on that on the Friday before. I'm not sure if you got that or not, but it was on my radar to let you know. So, yeah.
Radar, Richard, that's
And it wasn't a rain radar.
that's good from you. Righto. Is there anything else in relation to my report? Moved Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Mailing. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. I think that draws us to the end of the open agenda. So if I can have a mover to go into the confidential part of the agenda. The reasons are set out in the agenda in relation to section 48.1A of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act. Someone move, we go into committee. Move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Shellcrass. He says, getting it right this time. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right.